Welcome everyone, the Backupmonster Show, 55th episode, and my special guest today is Dave Russell from the Veeam. Hi Dave.
Hey, good to see you again.
Good to see you again. So third time in a row in 3 years. So I think it's obvious that we'll see each other in next year. but the subject is the data protection in 2024, 2025. But before that, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, doing very well. Very well. It's 7 a.m. Where I am in the United States. I've got a full cup of coffee. Each have guitars. We've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. So yeah, there we go.
Also mine. This is my last one. It's a 3 p.m. Central European time. So it's a 9 hour difference, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. Anything changed in your guitar accessories since the last year? Do you have any news or replacement?
I do. I've actually been expanding. So there's 9 behind me, and now I have 9 around on the walls.
No, it's 18 in your one room, single room.
Gosh, don't tell the missus.
Don't tell. Nice one. And it's still Van Halen as a top choice, I guess. Yes, and this is it won't change easily.
No, you can't mess with a great thing, right?
Yeah, sure you do. Actually, yesterday was a new album of the Kerry King. So I'm really a fan of the Slayers. So they moved and playing in a first single title. So this is let's say my bucket list for this weekend. So
nice.
This album is waiting for me. So I saw it's available, but I'm looking forward to have listen this kind. But coming back to the business, so we have a great opportunity to discuss the data protection trends for 2024 and 2025. We have a few slides around, of course. But before that, how you personally see what is the major, shift or the change since the last that we spoke last time?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very different is organizations are realizing that cyber threats are probably here to stay, and we'll unpack more around cyber as we go through our conversation. But I think the reality is that this is always going to be part of our day-to-day operations, right? We're not going to patch everything and be done. In other words, the other thing I think that it has really changed is the idea of needing to protect more and more cloud-based workloads. And cloud means many things, but software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, a little more container usage from the backup perspective or backup concern, not as much as I might have thought. And then, of course, everyone's just trying to keep their service levels, trying to make sure that they can get through their backup nightly activities, restore when they have to, and that's not always easy.
About the containers, we'll talk about it later, but let's put the first slide, because the first slide will be about the cloud adoption. So I'm curious about these numbers, and we've seen that this trend is growing. So more and more companies, they make a decision to go into the cloud-based or the backup as a service solutions. And what Veeam discovered during the latest survey, and what's your, let's say, recommendation on this field?
Yeah, what this slide's really showing is it's looking at different workloads. So backing up to the cloud is an easy concept to understand or talk about, but what's different here is it looks through 4 different workloads, SaaS-based applications at the top, like M365 as an example, cloud-hosted databases or files, data center or remote office servers, and then desktop laptops at the bottom. What surprised me, Paul, is that at the bottom, desktop and laptop actually had the lowest percentage of being sent to the cloud.
That was my next question, because for me, it should be the opposite. So the first choice, from my perspective, and we know that the backup as a service from the endpoints is from the more than 10 years, even longer than the typical SaaS apps. But that's why we're doing the service to realize that maybe there is a other trend here.
Yeah, it surprised me, honestly. My interpretation of that is that what we're really seeing here is backup administrators are saying they're mostly focused on protecting the applications. They're not as focused on protecting, like, my laptop. So percentage wise of data, very little, of that from a corporate perspective as compared to Microsoft 365 or a database that was born in the cloud, born on-prem. But I think in terms of advice, and certainly, one of the questions we were talking about is there a security risk with this? And you really have to decide what workload makes the most appropriate sense to send to the cloud. And if you do that, the security angle is real, meaning you may have seen, I think it was just last week, Google accidentally deleted a company's data, and they had to get that data from a backup file. And obviously, Google has trained professionals. I'm not trying to pick on Google. It's just a recent example in the news. But that recent example shows that even a major hyperscaler cloud provider like Google can make a mistake. It's still your data. If this was our company, we would still be responsible for making sure things like security and proper protection and access was in place. And obviously a mistake, was made in that instance. Thankfully, it sounds like they were able to get back and recovered. But I guess what I would finish with is, regardless of which workload you may see on the slide, security concerns, access control concerns, all those things still apply.
It's a good point to realize, and we all the time, trying to make it happen and to understand and educate the market that even if you're going into the hyperscalers, you need to still be responsible for your data.
Yes.
They will not they will do their best, but they not the first interest is to help you to protect the data against the ransomware, against the other threats, and against the human mistakes. So years ago, one of the third Amazon was out because of one of the administrators or the specialist put the wrong script, or put something or commit something different. So it will happen again. So it's not the first, let's say, pitfall, and it will goes around. But we need to understand that's why we need the data protection for the Microsoft 365 or the Google Workspace elements to be ready for this kind of the accidents. But do you think this lowering the need for the laptop, I thought that after the COVID arise in 2020, we came back into the necessary and need to protect the endpoints. And again, I saw that it was a hype. And again, I see that IT departments saying, okay, we still, even if we know that the data stays on the endpoints, we still focus on recommended to use the file sync and centralize file servers. And my guessing is that they don't want to care about the endpoints because it's some more work in the end to do. But we know that still roughly between 30 and 40% of the corporate data still stays on the laptop. And so I'm a little bit confused about this, about this trend that we supposed to get more awareness and more, let's say, data protected on the endpoints. But this is my personal statement. We'll see in the next years, especially from the ransomware perspective. It's also crucial. So let's see another stats and talk about this optimism about the cloud solution. Do you think let's put the slide, please, Shimon. Yeah, thank you. Because you said early that this cyber threats and all of the bedfellows will stays with us for the longer term, it was not one single shot. And they could be thinking, okay, if I will go to the cloud or the backup as a service solution, do I have enough security there, and is my data are actually protected? So from one side, it's really easy to go there, but I believe still many customers have some constraints and problems to go into the cloud, and based on, of course, different regions. So what's your thoughts, and what the numbers saying to us here?
Yeah, any important work activity is an attack surface. And, if you think about where cyber can enter the concerns, a cloud-based solution, whether that's Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace or any kind of deployment, is going to be vulnerable to attack. And just like you were saying, there's a shared responsibility model. There's a need to make sure just because it's outside of the data center doesn't mean it's outside of your responsibility. And so what we've actually seen, and I'll give you a little bit of a preview, in just under 3 weeks, 3 weeks from yesterday, we're going to publish our ransomware trends report for 2024. What we've found is that cloud workloads are actually just as vulnerable as any other workload in the data center or in a remote office situation. And it's because you still have the same kind of configuration, access control. Unfortunately, people leave ports open. We've heard of in the past where people have accidentally been on a webcast like this, and they've shown their port number, which suddenly people now could go and try to check that, see if it's been locked down or not. And if it hasn't, it could be exploited. So it really does go back to it's your responsibility. There's a lot we could unpack in this slide. I like to call this, why do we care about data protection or backup in 2024? And the print may look small, but it's showing all the things that can go wrong, like a server hardware outage, an application issue, storage issue. But what the bars are showing is, the long bars are saying, of all the different causes of things that could take down a server, regardless of where that server is, meaning in the cloud or on premises, what was, most likely, those are the long bars, and cyber was the most likely to take down a server unexpectedly. And then the little bars are looking at the last number of years. What was the most impactful? So you have cyber being the most frequent issue for taking down a server and the most impactful when it does take down a server. But it doesn't mean everything that we're used to worrying about in the data center has gone away, meaning we still have operating system configuration issues. We still have natural disasters. We still have all kinds of networking and other kinds of infrastructure concerns. And that's true whether you're on-prem or in the cloud.
Mm-hmm. So if it's goes like the same kind of the vulnerabilities, so it's hard to say which path is better. Yeah, I guess it's based of the size of the company. This could be the first point, because the adoption for the smallest companies or the small and medium-sized companies, it's much more easier to go and the cloudish all of their workloads into the single services. Of course, for the bigger, so mid-size or the enterprises, it's much more, they have a much more restriction, and they still feel the need to keep the data on-prem, and they're looking for the cloud as a secondary data or one of the another copies. But if you could, let's say, if you work like small company till 100 people, which direction you should go in 2024, 2025 plus? So cloud on-prem, if you have totally white space and have freedom of choice without any, let's say, legacy, so you need to choose a new platform. Which direction you would like to go?
I would say for most businesses, probably cloud. And the reason I say that is you could absolutely deploy a very efficient, very safe, perfectly configured solution for yourself on-prem if you are a small business. But it requires a certain amount of work. It requires continual investigation and continual administration. So, the example that I would use is some people enjoy cooking. They want to go buy all the ingredients. They want to make the meal. They don't mind cleaning the meal. Other people, my wife's out of town. I ordered pizza last night. I just wanted the outcome, right? And that's what I would say happens here too. There may be most organizations where if it was the two of us had a company, we're really in the business of doing something else. Maybe we're in the music business. We need to focus on that. We can't focus and spend all the time required to configure everything ourselves. So we went to the cloud to have that as a service. But some organizations, they have the skill, they have the interest, they like making sure that they can optimize things. Could you do it safely? Could you maybe do it less expensively yourself? Could you get exactly what you want, meaning configure, to meet your needs, tailor it, in other words? You absolutely could, but it comes with more time. It comes with a lot more effort. And I'll say risk, but the risk is just if you don't do everything correctly yourself. I don't think that's how most small businesses really wake up thinking, though. They're, again, in the business of doing something else. They would rather just have the outcome. In the example, they'd rather have dinner delivered than have to be a single parent at home worrying about how you're going to feed the rest of the family, right? That's not part of what their operational interests are. So if we were starting a company today, it'd be hard not to want to just each have a laptop. Maybe we have a printer, we have external monitors, but we probably don't have servers. We use as a service, we back up to the cloud, and we have as little infrastructure at our shop, our store as possible.
Yeah, I like this analogy with the meals. So I will take it for my purposes. Thanks for that. This delivery stuff, etc. So totally agree with you. So the base of the interest and base of the how much deep dive I would like to go into the subject, how much time and resources I have to make the things happen, and we're supposed to fully focus on the outcomes. And what I like really is more and more backup vendors right now gives the beauty. So we can also choose the mixed environment, so the hybrid mode. Yeah, we can have from time to time we can go and play as a chef in the kitchen, but in most cases we can deliver it. We can deliver it from the food from the city. So that's why some of the workloads could go there. If not all of them, and we could also use for example, cloud backup, cloud storage as a secondary or the third copy, which is also important for the 3-2-1-0 rule that the Veeam and the other vendors are promoting. So thanks for that. I know that when we started the conversation, you said about this containerized solution and how you see this change, because when everybody started to thought, okay, we need more than 60-70% of the data will be containerized. I said, okay, it's not possible in a short term. I've never believed that the market will go into this direction, but many of the service and many of the analysis they took that they will rule the world. How you see this adoption in a containerization? Before we'll move and discuss also about the VM and the switch from the Broadcom. This is also important topic that we're supposed to talk about it today.
Yeah. Containers have been interesting because it's absolutely happening, and it's happening, meaning container adoption is happening to companies of all sizes. It's not just large enterprise. It's, mid-size enterprise, small, medium business as well. And it's all over the world. We've actually surveyed company sizes, company industries, and it really, no surprise, larger organizations are definitely using containers more in production than smaller, but smaller organizations are using containers too. What hasn't happened, though, is the need to be recognized to protect the containers across every environment. And I think part of the reason why for that is it's a lot like VMware early days, and you mentioned Broadcom and VMware. If you think about 2007 or 2008, there were a lot of different ways that you could try to protect a virtual machine. You could do it at the storage layer, maybe take a snapshot. You could use your traditional backup software, maybe that was agent-based. You could try to do something maybe at the application layer. And that's essentially what we're seeing now with containers. You see a portion of the people in the data center trying to use their storage infrastructure as a way to protect them. You see application administrators or a Kubernetes administrator trying to protect it at that layer. And then, of course, you see the backup teams. What we're seeing overall, I'm just looking at our statistics to make sure I get that correctly, is there's still a few people, 3% in the survey that we did, that say, I don't need to back up containers at all. There's no stateful data in there. If I just pause on that, part of the storyline around containers, say in 2020, was a lot like Google. That Google itself in the data center, workloads spin up as a microservice. They're only active for minutes, maybe not even minutes, and then they're turned off. There's no data that persists in any of those instances. But that's not how most of us are implementing our containerized workloads. There is indeed static data or data that persists. So now we're seeing more and more organizations start to think slowly. I do need to go and protect containers, but it's not happening nearly as fast as we thought. In fact, our greatest percentage we saw was 45% say we back up containers, but we do it at the storage layer where the data resides. 26% said, well, we back up the underlying database components, which, as we know, if we pause on that, we know as backup people, just relying at the database component level may not mean that everything's completely consistent to be able to restore the entire environment. And then 25% said, well, we back up using a backup tool that can support containers. So you get many different approaches, even still today in 2024. Slowly, we're seeing more organizations decide they need a backup tool to be able to do this, but it still seems like it's early.
And my next question, thanks, Dave. So my next question is, it's also related to the Broadcom, because it's actually I wanted to discuss with you the adoption of switching to the other vendors, because we've seen that for the many years that we work in a backup industry, there always was a trend that customers were looking for the switch to the other vendor because the pricing, technology, etc. But lately we got the huge amount of the interest of switching to the other vendors because Broadcom made some, I don't want to say, I will say, the communication mess, and they pissed off many of the customers. And they made some statement that, okay, we don't want to pay 3-5 times more for the existing licensing. We don't want to go into the subscription. We would like to get the perpetual. So we'll figure it out and go into the other hypervisors. And we've never seen such a significant, let's say, statement for many organizations since the last 20 years. And what I see as a stalwart, which are specializing in KVM Zen-based hypervisors, the many customers saying, okay, we want to change, and we're looking for the backup vendor. And many of still backup vendors, they don't have this kind of the capabilities. So this is one of the point of the changing, the direction from the KVM to the other workloads. So I will be interested in what's your thoughts here. And and the first statement that I said, how about this, time frame, or how you see the need of exchanging the backup platforms, not only because of the VMware, but maybe for the other things such as economics or the different workloads. So if you could just put the slides. And Dave, sorry for the long question, but I believe it's important to grab and put the hands on the slide and have a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, let's click ahead a couple of slides, please, to the last one, and double click on that, because there's a lot. Yep, exactly, perfect. This slide here, and I know that there's all kinds of data on here, and it's small print, so I'll kind of read it out. So, people, like you say, have been thinking about switching backup solutions. They're different pain motivation. Usually it's more of a painful reason to switch than an optimistic reason. The pain, like you say, is price, or maybe I recently had a customer support issue with my current vendor, or maybe I'm having trouble properly protecting a workload. So now I've got to go look at something else. And what we're seeing now with Broadcom and VMware for vSphere is really unprecedented as far as I know, meaning that suddenly literally every single business that uses vSphere, which is an enormous number or percentage of organizations around the world of all sizes, every single organization's had to be asking themselves the last couple of years, what are we going to do? And even if the answer was we're going to just maybe pay a little more and not change, you still had to think about this, investigate the solutions or alternatives. And I find that absolutely fascinating, because it represented a new activity, a new work investigation for every single shop that was out there, every single data center. And that sounds so simple, but for some data centers, it wasn't. It was, I'm going to go try different hypervisors. We get Hyper-V for no charge. Let's look at that. We're going to go look at some of the other hypervisors, Verge.io, you name it, Proxmox, Oracle Linux KVM. I've talked to some organizations.
Scale computing, OpenStack, lots of different distributions. Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to some organizations. They say they looked at 5 or 6 alternatives. So imagine, we kind of talked before how everyone's very busy in the data center. That might be why you embraced cloud services, because you didn't have the time, maybe even the skill, but the expertise, the overall resources to go and do this. And now on top of that, you're looking at OpenStack, you're looking at maybe containerizing things. It represented a huge activity. And when people do switch their hypervisors, sometimes it makes sense to think, do I have to switch my backup solution? And that's over and above the switching that was already happening in our market. And we actually have a very unique market where people have been switching backup solutions, as long as I can remember. Nobody wakes up wanting to switch backup solutions. But if you just look at the market share of the vendors, they've been changing over time. So clearly people are saying that they're going to switch. And that's what this data shows, that while the backup budgets are increasing, the big numbers on the left-hand side, the good news is most of us are getting more budget to be able to protect, hopefully more, protect better. But the wheel on the right-hand side, 54% say that they think that they're going to change. Now, I will tell you, I don't think 54% or half are actually going to change.
It will be too messy, I guess, in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But it's still, if we even divide by 2, we have one of the four customers will do the change. So we're still talking about the significant number of of the new implementation. And what I see, even if we grab the Gartner from the 10 years, if you're comparing the legacy backups with the and the adoption of the new vendors, it looks totally different at this stage. So so we know that this market share is all the time, it's a little bit shaky, and the backup vendors who see and will understand the needs for the next, let's say, future admins or future generation scenarios, will build the advantage against the others. Cohesity purchased the Veritas, so this will be the change. To be honest, I don't know how it make it happen in the next years, but we'll see. The Rubrik got the IPO lately, so also they get additional funding. So lots of traction and the movement based on data protection. And you also, as a Veeam, lately introduced the new acquisition that we'll speak later on regarding the cyber security threats. So we see when we're sitting on the tables in the data protection, that we cannot do the old-fashioned style. We need to looking for some new and addressing new challenges and new workloads. That's why I also moved into the KVM and Zen. When we started as a store protecting this kind of the workloads in 2015, nobody understood why we're doing it. Right now, it's a little bit easier to explain them.
Yes.
That multi-hypervisor philosophy or the projects are they're supposed to be so naturally as a multi-cloud project. So you shouldn't avoid the vendor lock-in in every space. I'm not only talking about the hypervisors on the cloud, sometimes even in the backup. And I see many enterprises who divided the backup solution into 2-3 because they already built some island of the expertise. Different containers guys, different cloud guys, and I believe it's supposed to be like this. I'm not a huge fan of trying to monetize and monopolize the whole market based on one cloud, one hypervisor, one backup vendor. I personally believe, and this is what I would do when I could be in a customer shoes, to build a differentiator and have a multi-vendor infrastructure, software, and the services.
Yeah, I think it makes sense from a risk reduction perspective. You think about even close to backup, our storage arrays, and a lot of big data centers, they have an 80-20 rule or something like that, where they're 80%, let's say it's Dell EMC, and 20% NetApp was one of the historical, percentages. Nowadays, maybe it's 80% pure and 20% something else or whatever it may be. But they like the idea of having a couple of different suppliers. In some markets, that's hard to do. Networking, certainly, Cisco has a very dominant share. There are other providers for sure, but in some areas it's been difficult. But now we're seeing the same thing. We've come full circle. We see the same thing in hypervisors, where the dominant market share leader, which was VMware, maybe that will change over time. And I don't think, Paul, we're going to know for a couple of years exactly how this is going to shake out. And the reason why is, I'd be curious your thoughts. I want to interview you. I'd be curious your thoughts of my thesis or belief is that the very, very large enterprises, when Broadcom announced intentions to acquire VMware, some of them started looking at alternatives, but they also started looking at long-term contracts. So some of them purchased 3-year deals. I've heard a few that have said they purchased a 5-year agreement. So within the last few years, some of them bought multiple years, either from VMware themselves or later, more recently, from Broadcom after the acquisition closed. So overall, the large enterprises, for at least a little bit of time, a year, a couple of years, are locked into probably continuing on vSphere. And then they're going to have to consider this all over again. But then you have the mid-size enterprises who really did have to think about what they're going to do. And it's right now, I don't think there's a clear answer, meaning there's multiple different hypervisors, there's OpenStack, there's go to the cloud, there's shift to containers, there's maybe I just renew this once with VMware, maybe I actually introduce multiple hypervisors, I run Hyper-V if I'm a Windows organization for no charge. For some workloads, I pay them extra money to do vSphere for some production workloads. But I guess my thought is for the most of the market, it's probably going to be 2 years, maybe even 3 years before we really understand how this is going to fully settle.
I fully agree with you. So, a few friends around, they said the switch will happen this year. And I said, no. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Even if I be in their shoes, I will not do so drastic change. So if we made a decision to leave the technology, we need to do it in a proper way. Or, we need to test it, migrate, and, build the use case based on it. So 2-3 years exactly. This is what I agree with you here. It will last, and we don't know the final percentage, and of course we don't know what will be the next key decision from the vision perspective, the integration, and the product. Today, they saying they killing VMware. In a year, it will be totally opposite. They will introduce a few features inside the Broadcom that will flourish the market, and everybody will forget about this mess from this year. So this is how the market works. So we need to be ready for all of the options. But I guess from the backup vendor perspective, we need to also have the strategy to protect the multiple different workloads, not only related to the VMware or the Hyper-V, which were dominant in the last 1 or at least 2 decades.
Yeah, totally agree. The other wild card scenario here, and do you remember Beanie Babies, the little stuffed animals?
Mm-hmm.
And that was owned by, the way I understand it, it was owned by a single person, Thai corporation. And that person could decide at any moment to take certain Beanie Babies out of market. And then later on, he would reintroduce them again. So he could just decide however he wanted to do things, he could. Well, really, Broadcom could do that too. What if in 2025, Broadcom says, we're going to revisit and lower our pricing? They could do that suddenly and decide they want to go recapture, especially the mid-size enterprise and the small enterprise. So to your point about we have to be ready for anything, I think it's 100% true. I think in part we have to be ready for everything because the data centers don't yet know how they're going to go. But the very thing that's driving all this change, who's to say that a business decision isn't altered in the next year or the next 2 years, and Broadcom in the future is behaving differently than Broadcom of today?
Sure do. And coming back, so 2 slides before, we have a cyber attack. So we actually started the conversation, and this will be our last topic for today. So let's see the numbers from the cybersecurity threats, because this is what we're supposed to be worried about. So next one, please. The slide. Next one.
Yeah.
This ransomware that is it's coming back every year, unfortunately. But this is interesting point, because the ransomware itself, this is what I see as a backup vendor, is not only related to how we're supposed to cope with the ransomware and how you can help as a backup vendor to go in to point in time and make the restoration done. But what I noticed, we have more and more inquiries about how you are as a store or the other backup vendor are protected against the ransomware. Because what we noticed, more and more attacks are related to the backup vendors,
Yes.
not only to the production. Because we cope and we put in all of the data together. So sometimes hackers, they do not expose and trying to get the production, but they trying to get the backup. So I see 75%. This is the huge numbers, and this realizes me that it's not a matter how, but when we will be attacked, all of us, from the ransomware.
Yeah, these numbers are actually, I think they're pretty scary. And exactly what you said, if you were a betting person, you went to the casino, these odds are not in your favor. And it's true. We've actually double clicked in our upcoming ransomware trends report. We've looked globally. We've looked across different industries. We've looked across different company sizes. The vast majority of the time, this is just ransomware is a crime of opportunity. The bad actors send out thousands of emails, phishing attempts every day, literally hundreds of thousands, and they're just seeing who may click on what. Are there state-sponsored or targeted attacks? Absolutely. But the vast majority of ransomware, it's just right place, right time, or you could say the wrong place, wrong time, but it's just completely random. And as a result, only 1 out of 4, that green bar of 25%, believes that they were not hit. I'm careful to say believe because maybe they're infected and they don't know it yet. The bad actor hasn't unleashed the threat, or at least the person answering the survey, maybe they didn't have knowledge of what went on somewhere in their organization. But the really scary statistic to me is the one in the little call out box. More organizations were hit 4 times a year or every quarter than don't think they were hit at all. And that's, if you look on the right-hand side, the red bars, that totals up to 26% got hit 4, 5, 6, or more than 6 times. So imagine, like, more than 6 times. Imagine every other month you have a new attack that you're dealing with, or you believe it's a new attack. Our thesis is that oftentimes these aren't new attacks. It is attack that relaunched into the wild, meaning something was brought back into the environment or something was opened back up a port and the same attack was relaunched. You got reinfected, in other words.
No, I'm just looking for one word. I just want to be 100% sure how to say in English. Okay, it's easier than I thought. It reminds me about, for example, the dress room, because lately I was looking for the suit, and I took this suit and I saw that the mold just ate the significant piece of my jacket, and I said, oh gosh. So it's kind of the same with the ransomware. So if you put your clothes, your data to the dress room or to the data center, and you will forget or do not take care of them, from time to time, or audit or just test it, you can have a bad fellows that they starting to playing with your data, like the mold played with my suits and the jacket.
I'm gonna steal that one. Yeah.
You see, like that. I just when you started this discussion, I said I just imagined this kind of this scenario, because I was cleaning my after the winter the dress room, and I found it. So I took yours and took mine, so we got it.
I know, I like that.
So let's grab the last slide, Shimon. Thank you. Supposed to be the backup as a no, it's go the previous one.
Yep.
Yeah. So we discussed about the bus, and we already started with the bus discussion. But how we have, and we need to also rely that we have a disaster recovery as a service, which could be the part of the deal, especially when we have some threats and ransomware. How your survey is how you see the trends, and what could be the advisory and advice for the audience that watching our episode here.
Yeah, I would say probably 2 things. We did speak mostly about backup as a service, but I think it's really important to understand the role that disaster recovery as a service has to play, whether that's cyber or a data center outage because components failed, or maybe some weather event. And in that situation, you may not have your hardware. You may need to fail over to someone else's compute. And of course, you need your data there as well. So disaster recovery as a service, in my mind, makes even more sense in some regards than only backup as a service, because it's important to protect the data. But what if you don't have the hardware? In a ransomware environment, maybe your servers are infected, or it's literally a crime scene. You're not allowed to run on that gear. You don't know if they're clean or not, or there's been fire or some other disaster. But I would just encourage people to view disaster recovery as a service as, take a look at that if you're not already, because, you have to appreciate it's not just the data, it's everything that's required to run the application to make use of that data. The second piece would be, if we look at what these statistics are telling us, it's really, what is it that people said that they're looking for from a provider, a service provider? So this is looking over 3 years' time. 2024 is the green, 2023 or year prior is in the blue, and then the purple is 2021, a couple years back. And so you can see it's shifted a little bit over time, but on the left-hand side, the question was, the response is all or most of the data protection is managed by my own IT staff. I'm just utilizing a service and an infrastructure somewhere else. So it's still the data centers heavily involved. On the other side, on the right-hand side, it was, no, I actually want all or most of the data protection to be handled by the BAS or disaster recovery as a service provider. But in the middle, you do have middle. It's a shared responsibility. What I think is interesting is it's pointing out that people are deciding, just because I use a backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service provider, doesn't mean I have to give up control, doesn't mean I can't still be involved, or doesn't mean I still can't monitor things, issue restores if I want to. So it's not a one size fits all. You can get the service the way that you want to have the service.
I just comment on the live, so no, sorry for that. But you need to cope with some comments. Beauty, for those who never saw our live session with Dave, it's a part of the, let's say, tradition at this stage that we use in our guitars. And I was thinking of, maybe we'll give some quiz. So we'll play some song, so each of us, and we'll give the space. Cannot be so easy. So the audience, or they're watching live, or if they will watch YouTube later on, not as a live, they can put the comment, what's actually the song we are playing. We haven't prepared, we haven't discussed it with Dave, so it's what's on live, and I guess we'll prepare some small gift for anybody who will be the first one and answer this song. My song wasn't easy because last time when I'm running, I just all the time singing this song. It's quite the old one. But let's start with Dave. I'm curious what he has in his mind. So some sample of the song playing on a guitar. Are you open to have this kind of the challenge?
Yeah,
and a quiz for the audience.
Yeah, I don't have my amp on, but I'm trying to. Oh, you know what? I can grab an acoustic though.
Oh, acoustic one could be great.
Okay. Here's one.
It can be a small sample. You don't need to, expose everything. It must be difficult. you.
Old Tom.
Oh, I don't know the answer. 90s, and I have my amp. But we'll have a classic, so we'll have a acoustic, and we'll have some metal part. I don't know if I remember how to play. I've never played it for a while. I will give some hints, but not at the first, after the few minutes. So we will put some hint on in a comment later on from Dave and myself, and also on a YouTube. Did you figure it out or no?
I didn't figure it out.
It's hard. It's not easy. Even I couldn't manage, but I will ask a few friends around who lately did, listen this kind of the music. Dave, like always, the wonderful time, spending with you, talking about the data protection trends for the 2024-2025. Let's finalize and quote with the three different. Let's summarize with the three major quotes for the audience. So what we supposed to be ready for, let's say, in the next few years, and what is the key aspects that we should carry on. So let's put the 3 points from you here.
Sure. Well, sadly, cyber's here to stay. So you're never done. It's like fitness. You don't exercise once. It's a regular practice. So cybersecurity is something that you regularly have to consider. So that would be number one. Number two, I love you're ready for anything. And that anything can shift over time. So whether that's from a hypervisor perspective or a cloud workload perspective. So our responsibility is to make sure, as professionals in charge of taking care of the data, that we can be ready for the future. So keep looking at new workloads and new methods and new hypervisors. You have to be planning ahead and be ready or nimble for that. The other one is around cloud-based services for backup. And I think really now the third point would be, we're probably at a point for most of us where at least a cloud copy of your data, of your backup makes sense. And for many of us, quite possibly a backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service makes sense as well.
Mm-hmm. So thanks, Dave. So thank you for your time, for all of the audience. So my guest was the Dave Russell, the Senior Vice President and Head of Strategy of the Veeam Software. So Dave, looking forward to have you next year. And you know that their invitation is open. It's a part of the tradition. I remember you have 18 guitars in your room, and I have still 3. So I need to learn the lesson and grab some new one. My wife will not be happy, but I still have plenty of those to run up to you. So glad to have you here. Great time spending and lots of insights related to the backup and recovery trends. If you will have any question today for me in person, feel free to ask still during on a live or later on the YouTube. So we'll send you over. And I saw on my marketing already sent, Angie said that the gifts will be ready. We will send a little bit hints related to what we played. Unless you have already got the answer, so no worries here. So please, figure it out. and we'll send you over some good stuff related from the Backupmonster team or the Veeam team. So Dave, again, thanks. See
Thank
you
you.
on one of the next episodes. Stay safe, and hopefully to see you. Like this is what we discussed before the session, maybe in a few weeks, face to face.
Look forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.